Hello and welcome to the first episode of Honey, We Screwed Up the Family podcast. Today's episode, I'm going to be focusing on principles instead of problems. And now, if you've ever tried solving the same problem every single day, congratulations. Your family's stuck in a nice little feedback loop. And the thing is you keep getting stuck because you're focusing on problems instead of principles. Today, I'm dropping the mindset shift that will stop this emotional chaos, kill the power struggles that you find yourself in, and help you parent like someone who's not secretly Googling how to fake your own death and target. Now, I want to start off with a real case study and a real story of what I'm actually dealing with a case that I'm working on presently. I had a parent tell me recently that their bedtime routine is like a 40-minute nightmare that never endingly just keeps falling apart over and over again. And one of the things I asked them at the intake was, well, listen, it seems like you're focusing on all these details and these minutia problems with your kids, and this leads to you never endingly debating them like they have a Harvard or Yale law degree, and you ultimately end up losing every time that you're in court with them. So one of the things I asked them and I wanted to help them shift to is focusing more on kind of reinforcing principles on an ongoing basis, not just in the bedtime routine, but in other aspects, because ultimately by focusing on principles instead of problems, you're now no longer getting caught in the weeds, in the details, and in the minutia that kids more often than not love to debate because they don't really understand. More often than not, the reason kids are arguing with you is because they're stuck in that phase in their life where they're like, well, why is this happening? But why are we doing it this way? Well, why is this important? It's just coming out in more sophisticated ways because now they're older, right? Which is why you're debating with them and arguing with them because they're really actually trying to understand at the core, what are you really getting at? Why is this really a big deal? Why are you making me do this? And so instead of getting really small and granular, which is probably what you're doing, which is what I think a lot of well-intentioned other people that are in the parenting space tell you to do, is to give them real clear and logical ideas. The problem is the more you get specific and more detailed, the more you get confusing to the kids. And so by focusing on principles or broader ideas, what winds up happening is they can start to recognize patterns. Kids are pattern oriented. They learn to observe and recognize how things work, and then they live within that pattern and framework. As much as everybody wants to tell me, oh no, you don't understand, my kid is super smart. I'm not saying they're not smart, but what I am telling you is they're not kind of ahead of you in what you're trying to do. They're actually just learned what your pattern is and how things operate, and they're just learning to react and respond more to you, which, by the way, is a massive blessing in disguise. Because if the truth of the matter is that your kid is this sociopath that knows how to anticipate your every move and they're like three chess moves ahead of you, you got yourself a real big problem. That's not really the case. They've just learned over time to recognize what you and your spouse's patterns are, and then they operate and react and respond into this. Now, again, they're reacting to this pattern. And so when we start talking, and I'm going to help you figure this out today a little bit, when you start focusing on principles, these are broad concepts. And I'm going to show you something on my whiteboard. And for those of you that can't see, I'm going to narrate it for you so you can understand what it means. But essentially, these principles are big ideas and they're rules that if you follow the majority of the time, your life tends to be pretty easy. When you start talking about the detailed problems and more of the specifics regarding the situation that you're in, not only are you confusing the kid and you're setting yourself up for an argument and for a massive debate, but invariably what you're also doing, which is definitely not going to work in your favor, is you're working yourself into this almost micromanaging role where you're then getting compliance and you're focusing on behavior. And behavior, obviously, we want to change your kids' behavior. I'm not saying that we don't. The problem is if you focus just on behavior, you're missing the forest through the trees because and the way that I kind of operate with my clients is we're focusing on creating and instilling these principles into your kid's character. And when you really think about it, the reason we focus on behavior is because we believe that behavior, and once we can change the behavior, that will then create a character set. That's like the carriage before the horse, though. If you focus on creating identity and character and you leverage those principles and you instill them, well, now you have this almost self-fulfilling feedback loop where the kid will start to internalize these ideas and then start to feel empowered through them. And by focusing on principles, again, it allows them to comprehend and understand what you're getting at in a much broader and bigger way, which again allows them to recognize patterns and then recognize how consistently these principles are coming up in their life so that they're empowered and they feel great about actually leveraging them. So that's really the shift that I want to help you make, because a lot of the biggest one of the big parenting myths that I hear from parents all the time is just like, well, if I'm not specific, if I don't actually tell them what to do or how to do it, well, then they're going to be confused and they're not going to know what to do. And then ultimately they're going to make more mistakes. We're going to end up in more conflicts. I'm not saying don't try to coach them at some point. What I'm saying though is if you get super granular, you're just working yourself into a job and you're further confusing the kid. And so I want to help you shift over to these principles because it's also going to change the way in which you start talking to your child and to your adolescent or to your teenager. Because again, you can start doing this with kids that are about 4.5. I've done this with kids at 4.5. My whole caseload is run the range between 4.5 all the way up until obviously 18. Some children are 21, depending on who you talk to and how you work with them and mentally how they are. But invariably, these concepts, these principles, again, are a very different way of focusing on this, and it allows you to feel more empowered. You're more efficient as a parent, and your kid is less confused, and they're recognizing this pattern. And so, again, it diffuses some of the power struggles. I'm not going to tell you this is a silver bullet. It's one of many tools in the toolbox that I help parents use. It's a part of my emotionally strategic parenting framework that if you want, you can Google or you can look up that I have access to. It's also a part of my book, Honey, We Effed Up the Family, Honey, We Effed Up the Kids. Um, but essentially, by focusing on these principles today, and what I'm going to show you is again, it allows you to be more efficient, more effective, and it allows your kids to not get super duper confused and frustrated. Now, this is also going to allow you to consistently talk about the principles across the board of a lot of different things that you're encountering with your kids, because now they're going to hear it more consistently. Whereas when you talk about the problems, you're going to be talking about different problems in different situations in different contexts, and obviously there's going to be external variables that are going to influence them. Whereas when we focus on these principles, you can say the same key word or words, because more often than not, the parents that I work with have anywhere between 2 to 4 principles. Most have 3 in their family dynamic that they're trying to instill in their kids. And what will this will allow you to be able to do is again keep hammering these same kind of ideas home across a wide variety of problems so that again your kids are ultimately able to pick up on those patterns. Now, I'm going to show you what this looks like because on the whiteboard, and I'm going to narrate this for people that can't see it. When you think about these principles, I want you to think about a golf umbrella. Now, when you think about a golf umbrella, it's really broad and big, and it's allowing you the ability to be able to cover a lot of ground with just the simple stem of the umbrella that you're holding. Now, the wire that holds all the mesh, right, all the mesh to the golf umbrella, these are all these are problem areas. These are specifics. These are the kids interrupting you while you're talking to your spouse, or they're leaving their bowl of milk that they had from cereal on the coffee room table and they're waiting for you to pick it up. They're struggling to be able to pick up their backpack from the middle of the living room floor when they come home from school. Maybe another thing that they're doing is they're leaving out a bunch of food that they've made, some of the accoutrement, the cheese from the nachos that they made right after school because they're starving, right? These are all the metal, almost wires that hold that mesh, the umbrella fabric together. And again, these are all interconnected to the stem of the umbrella. Now, the stem of the umbrella that you hold is actually the core principle. And this runs true through all of the pieces of content. Now, again, remember, you're going to have about 2, 3, or 4 of these principles because you want them to be broader. You'd rather them be broader and capture a lot more problems instead of you having multiple umbrellas that are a little bit more niche. Because again, we're trying to stay big picture and we're trying to focus on these bigger ideas, and that way you can encapsulate more of the problems under these umbrellas. So for these examples that I just gave you, the principle would be that they're struggling to have consideration, right? They're having a hard time having consideration for leaving their bowl of milk on the table that now is going to inconvenience somebody else to have to pick it up. They're struggling to recognize how they're having a lack of consideration for being able to pick up their backpack or maybe even the fact that somebody had to go to Whole Foods to buy, $7.99 organic cheese. That's gonna, take another 40 minutes to go back and get if it goes bad, right? And for Taco Tuesday, because everybody loves Taco Tuesday. Come on. If you don't love Taco Tuesday on this audience, please unsubscribe from this podcast. Huge taco fan over here. You gotta have Taco Tuesday. But my point being is you really want to hyperfixate on now recognizing this is an opportunity or this is a chance for your kids to recognize why consideration is important. Another principle, by the way, that actually runs through a lot of those too is being able to persevere. That might also be another principle that within your family, content problems that you have with your kids, that might be another principle that you could then fixate and focus on that would allow you to, again, highlight these themes or these recurring themes that your kids can start to recognize. Now, this is going to start to become very annoying to your children. And in a lot of ways, you actually kind of want it to become annoying. Things that are annoying become effective over time. Because I'll give you a great example. If you get into a modern car today and you don't actually engage your seatbelt, your car will annoyingly beep at you until it's buckled up. And depending on what car brand and model you have, I even know that the passenger seats will also activate and start beep, 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 beep. And it drives everybody in the car nuts that ultimately that person eventually puts on their seatbelt. Obviously, there's ways around this, right? But more often than not, that tends to be pretty effective in getting people to put their seatbelt on. Now, the same thing is going to start to become true for your kids because by focusing now on being able to help them realize that these are recurring themes or these are recurring areas in which they ultimately need to be able to recognize why you're bringing these problems up or why you keep kind of hammering home what's going on here. This allows them to also pick up on these patterns that I've been talking about today so far. So remember, if you're focused too much on behavior, you're ultimately going to get the kid to also feel really bad about themselves. Because by focusing on problems, all of your dialogue that revolves around your interactions with your kids now becomes pretty negative. And it's more often than not something that they're not doing. So it's now negative conversation, which sets a negative tone, which makes more often than not the kid feel bad or insecure or not good enough. Or by the way, they'll start to say, nothing pleases you, or nothing I do is right. And they'll start lashing out or getting upset with you. Now, that might not be what your intention is, because again, you're just trying to highlight some of these areas that they can actually work on to actually feel better about themselves. But they're because of the priming of what you're doing, because the priming effect of the conversation, meaning the thing that you're focusing on and the emotion that you have at the beginning is negative, it carries that negative emotional message or energy throughout the remainder of that conversation, which again is not something that you really, the majority of parents intend and or want, right? We want to have these positive interactions with our kids. We want to be able to have a good time. And even when we're teaching them and trying to help them grow and learn, we want them to feel empowered. We don't want them to feel disempowered. Nobody wants that. And so this process of now focusing on principles, and by the way, you can make the principles negative. I would not recommend that. Like, don't say that you're being inconsiderate or, you can't persevere. It seems like you're not persevering here. You really want to steer clear of that. And I can give you some language right now where what I train parents to do is be able to say, hey, listen, this is a great opportunity for you to, persevere, have consideration, manage disappointment. That's another one that I hear and that I use often with a lot of parents where they're having a hard time managing disappointment when things don't go their way. And this allows you to frame it from a place of, hey, you're learning. So now when you focus on principles, even in your own mind as a parent, your energy and attitude about what they're doing is going to be reframed more from oh, they're learning how to do this instead of, how come you're doing this again? Like, oh my God, how many times do we have to talk about this? Pick up your cereal bowl again. It now turns the conversation into, hey, this is just another opportunity for you to insert principle here. So the conversation now becomes positive. You also feel like you're trying to help your child learn and grow. So your attitude and demeanor towards them is going to also shift and become totally different because you're framing it differently even for yourself. And because you're focusing on these broader concepts, This also allows you to avoid a lot of the debating because in the process of you listening to the kid, because they're always going to have a response, right? I mean, every parent that's listening to this is like, oh, yeah, this sounds great, Matt, but like my kid's going to argue and debate with me still. I agree with you. Trust me. You have no idea the caseload and the horror stories I have of cases of kids treating their parents awfully, just absolutely horribly. Um, I have a response that I can give you here, but ultimately, what you want to be able to say to them is, hey, everything that you're saying is true, and I understand where you're coming from. Mom and I, dad and I, again, we're just trying to help you understand where you have an opportunity and why we're talking about consideration, perseverance, managing disappointment, whatever the principle is. And therefore, again, you can inoculate some of the debating and the arguing while also appreciating that the kid's perspective still holds some water to it. Like it's not untrue. Whatever they're saying, whether it's, oh, you don't understand, I had to go to the bathroom. Yeah, I'm sure you did have to go to the bathroom. And you still have an opportunity to persevere and have consideration to pick up your nacho cheese because if we don't have cheese for Taco Tuesdays, I'm going to be upset. And so is little Timmy. Little Timmy loves cheese on his tacos. Hell, how are we going to make any quesadillas? Everybody likes a Dilla. Come on. You see where I'm going? So, again, this allows you to avoid a lot of the negative overarching feelings and almost immediate unconscious response that you even have as a parent because now it becomes, hey, you're learning how to do this and you're trying to figure out why this is even important and where this even comes up in your life. And so again, this becomes a repetitive, almost ad nauseum response. Now again, don't go overboard. Don't just keep doing this, over and over and over again to beat a dead horse. You really want to start to just highlight this and talk about this on an ongoing basis. But again, I don't want you to become too annoying, but I do want it to become enough where the kids are really going, okay, okay, I get it. Enough with the consideration. I get it. All right, I get it. You're trying to help me persevere, or you're helping me try to manage disappointment. Like that's where I want you starting to go. Because again, you don't want to be too overboard and kind of go in that direction. So I'm going to give you a list of some principles because a lot of parents are like, so like, can you give me some principles? Because I have no idea where to start. Now, here's a few that you can steal from me that are predominantly the most consistent that I utilize with a lot of my caseload. This isn't a literal exact list of all of them, but these are the main ones. Obviously, I said perseverance. I said managing disappointment. I used consideration. Another one is proactivity where they're starting to be more proactive with making decisions to get things done. Prioritization is another one, being able to prioritize things that you want to do or things that you need to do over things that you want to do. Accepting no is slightly different from managing disappointment. Managing disappointment is broader and it can encapsulate accepting no, but some kids don't have a hard time managing disappointment when things they go their way, but they like say they lose a sports game or something kind of breaks on their toy, like they're upset and they can kind of work through it but they're not turning into this knockdown drag out. When they have a hard time accepting no, it's mainly they're asking for a lot and they're requiring a lot of engagement or interaction from the parents or they want something. So they're just having a hard time accepting no. Being thorough, finishing what you start. That's like being thorough as a concept is also a really great principle. And then the last one that a lot of my clients will utilize is having gratitude or appreciation. The other is understanding value. So you can use gratitude, appreciation, understanding value. They're somewhat different depending on how you look at them, but that is a really almost a pretty good list that the majority of parents, the average parent that I would work with, those are the predominant ones. I'll give you another one though. Time, place, and people. This is also one that comes up a lot where certain behaviors that your kids will do, they do them in the wrong time, the wrong place, and the wrong people, around the wrong people. And so helping them understand that like them making silly jokes that are inappropriate around the family dinner table might be more appropriate at a sleepover in their friend's basement on a Saturday night with just their buddies around. Like now they're starting to hone and recognize some of these almost life principles that will allow them to kind of still get a lot of their needs met and really start to understand why they're so important and imperative. Um, Tone matters, by the way. So the tone in which you use with your kids really matters. You don't want to overtalk. You want to kind of use what I call a tone of indifference, where you're just kind of bringing these up very matter of fact. Um, uh, like I kind of use the seatbelt chime. Like it won't shut up until you click it. It's annoying, but it works. I don't want you to almost be hostile or angry or aggravated. That's only going to frame this again and prime this in a negative emotional state, which is more often than not going to work very heavily against you. Um, there's another key strategy that I want to really hone on this podcast episode that's incredibly important and sounds really silly, but is very, very critical to doing this. I want you to use and get rid of the word but. B-U-T should be erased from your vocabulary when you're interacting with your kids, with your spouse, with other people that you're trying to have some breakthrough with. When you use the word but, it disjoints and disconnects everything at the beginning that you say, and it takes that all away. It sets it immediately on fire, it eviscerates it, and it only hyper accentuates the ending. And parents really do a great job at being able to validate and try to appreciate what their child is going through. They're trying to still connect. So they'll be able to validate really well. Then they set it all on fire with one word, and then they talk about the principle or what they're trying to help the kid recognize. And they don't understand why that's not working. It's literally because of that one word. And it's so silly and it sounds ridiculous, but it's actually extremely helpful. If you really want to make this enjoyable, to really want to change this in your dynamic, if you and your co-parent or your partner with them for a week catch each other, make it a game where you catch them saying "but" and challenge them to change it to "and." When you make things fun and enjoyable, I promise you will start to see how often and how terrifying it is that you use the word but and how much that's ruining your relationships on such a massive scale. It's not even funny because most people want to feel understood and want some level of benefit of the doubt and understanding before they're going to get influenced. And you may already be doing this and then using the word but and completely destroying that and shitting all over it. And then you really have no influence, even though you've done it calmly, nicely, lovingly. You feel like you validated. That one word is crushing you. Now, again, I know it's not proper English. I don't care about proper English. I care about breakthroughs here. Um, Making it and conjoins those two things that oppose each other equally. It allows you to value them equally. And it allows you to feel that you're connecting with the other person, and it allows them to feel like you care about that too, TOO, in conjunction with, alongside. So when you're doing this, I want you to really try and validate and appreciate where the kid's coming from. Like, hey, I understand you had to go to the bathroom, and trust me, I've been there where you gotta go, bud. I totally get it. And there's still an opportunity and a chance for you to be able to persevere and have consideration with putting this stuff away. And again, this is a small, small strategy and a slew of thousands of others that I have in my framework. I'm not telling you that this is going to be a silver bullet. Please, under no circumstances is this going to be. I'm just trying to give people a little bit more of an understanding of a different way of thinking in their parenting to make their life a little bit less chaotic and hellish. Raising kids is brutal, and I hope we can find ways, and I hope I can help you find ways to navigate it and make it more enjoyable because having kids can actually be incredibly powerful and loving and wonderful. If you don't have the right strategies, though, it feels like you're just in boot camp every day, and every day is just another nightmare. And that sucks. That's no fun. I don't want that for you. I know you didn't have kids to, deal with this either. This is not how you thought it was going to go. So, being able to swap those two things out, appreciate the emotional perspective of the kid, and then challenge them to shift and go into focusing on a principle and being able to recognize that can help you substantially cut down on these conflicts, the debates, the arguments, and it allows the kids to start to recognize where it is that you're actually going. Um, Now, you're not going to fix everything in this podcast. This is not meant to do that. I just think that shifting from being focused on problems and going into principles is definitely going to change the tone and the vibe of your family dynamic. It might even change your marriage if you can also start to get succinctly clear about what it is that you and your partner are really trying to principally get to at the bottom of the process in your interactions and in your arguments. And this is going to allow you and your family, hopefully, to start to develop a little bit more of a positive energy to even these problems and these interactions that you're having. I'm hoping it'll allow you to focus on having a little bit more fun, a little bit more energy, and quite honestly, to be more efficient and effective so you're not so burned out as a parent. Um, if you want more tips and tricks, I also have a Substack that I write on, which is you're probably getting this podcast from. If not, go and Google Honey, We Screwed Up the Family Substack, or you can Google my name, Matthew Maynard, LMFT. It'll pop right up. That way you can read. I have a ton of free articles, a ton of premium content on there that you can pay for if you want, but I have a ton of free tips and tricks. I highly recommend you subscribe. I'm churning out content a lot. I'm going to keep doing some of these podcasts when I can. My caseload's pretty busy. But if you want to talk to me one on one, or if you want to join a group that I'm starting, you can reach out and I can give you more information on that. You can pick up my book, Honey, We Effed Up the Kids. It's a step-by-step guide on how to be a less shitty parent. I can promise you this book is chock full of my entire parenting system, and it's going to go over principles and problems and so much more. If you need anything else, just Google me. I have a ton of free resources out there. I'd love to help you out. And if you know anybody that could benefit from this, please share this with them. Please send this to them. I promise you, they'll be able to benefit too. And I really want to start a community of parents that are really focused on strategies and accomplishing these deep, loving, but really strong character kids because we have a society that really needs character more than ever. So please share and let me know. If you also have ideas for other podcast episodes, you can reach out, shoot me an email. I'm always love hearing from fans. And thank you for listening. I hope you have a great rest of the day.